All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today we are going to be starting off, as you can see, we're going to be getting into the Civil War. Now, before we do, however, we got to talk about someone very important, particular um, in the Civil War. Basically, what happened to this person before everything happened. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at who that person was. So, the objective today, we're going to analyze the path that Abraham Lincoln took to become president of the United States. We're going to examine the legend of Honest Abe. What happened? What does that mean? Things like that. How do you get that nickname? And then we're going to create an argument on whether Lincoln um, would have gotten as far as he did in life if it wasn't for his stepmother's support. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that. Why was his stepmom so important in his life? Okay. All right, so here is your warm-up picture. Now, on your paper, it says there to write down three words that pop into your head when you see this picture. Okay, so take a minute, write down three words, not a sentence, just three words. Okay, and pause the video, do that right now. So you should have the three words. If you still haven't, pause the video, okay? Because the next part goes to number two. Okay, number one, just write down three words. So again, if you are done, then here's the second part. Okay. Um, your fellow classmates, this is what we did in class. The whole class, I asked everyone to give me one of the words they put down. Okay. And some of the common words were like um, old, president, slavery, mad. Some people say they look mad. $5, smart, tall, serious, tired, grumpy. Someone put healthy, charity, leader, president, assassinated, successful, revolutionary, well dressed, determined. So, all those words, again, I cannot write it down. Again, this is the video, I can't write them down. So, of all those words, which one do you feel best described them? If you can't remember the words, go back a couple seconds and hear those words again. And which one do you feel best describes him? Okay, so that's question number two. Once you're finished with that, awesome. Okay, because we're moving on right now in three, two, one. All right, so Lincoln was born February 12th, 1809, in Hardin County, Kentucky, which is now called LaRue County. Now, his parents, his father's name was Thomas Lincoln, and his mother's name was Nancy Hanks. Now, that kind of last name should sound familiar, right? You may know someone, a celebrity with that last name. And that's the thing. He is actually a descendant, or actually related to the actor Tom Hanks. If you've ever seen Forrest Gump and things like that, um, Toy Story, you know, Woody, they're related. Okay, he's not the exact bloodline of Lincoln, um, because the Lincoln's own kids didn't have kids. Two of them died pretty young, and the other one um, died, but when he did, he had no children. So he's not from directly from Lincoln's bloodline, but it's from his mother's bloodline. Okay. Now, Lincoln's family, they were frontiersmen. What that was when people went out to the west, they would settle in a claimant area, all these tall bushes and grass and weeds and things like that. They would clear that out, take out all the rocks and the dirt and stuff like that. And then once all that land had been cleared and ready for growing, they would plant things. They would build their own homes out of logs. These were the log cabins. Okay, so there's a lot of work that went into these territories and these areas. Um, a lot of politicians at this time too, in the 1840s, 50s, 1860s, they claimed to be log cabin people. You know, Because these log cabins are not like the log cabins we have now up in the woods, where they're nice, insulated, polished and things like that. These log cabins were just straight up chopped up wood, stacked together, stuff like that. Sometimes they had to stick like mud and stuff like that in between the boards because the boards were not completely flat, so they could nice secured and stuff like that. Sometimes they had to stick like mud and stuff like that in there to stop the water, rain, a cold from getting in. Um, Also, the ground was straight up the ground. It was dirt. And like Lincoln had to sleep on like hay and things like that, or just straight on the floor. Um, and that's where a lot of these politicians would be like, I'm from a log cabin family. In reality, they weren't. They were from a family that had some money, things like that. Um, but that plays a role later on. Okay. Now, Lincoln family, they moved from Kentucky to Indiana. The thing is, when a family set up a claim, they had to file all paperwork saying we live at this area, this in this part of the state. And it just so happened that whenever Lincoln's dad filed the claims and things like that, somehow the paperwork got misplaced or disappeared completely. So they did all this work clearing out the land, and now they're basically told you don't live here. And then these plantation owners would be like, oh, well, I'll buy the land, so they would rightfully get the land. And that's where Lincoln's dad was like, wait, 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 we did the paperwork, we did all that stuff. Well, we can't find it. So this is where Lincoln's dad really starts to get a hatred of slavery, not because of what it did to African Americans, but mainly that it made the plantation people rich and they got away with basically everything. Lincoln's family did all the hard work, and these plantation owners are reaping the benefits. Now, in 1818, Lincoln's mother she passes away from milk sickness. This was something people got back in the day. It was at that time it was pretty common. You basically like you threw up, and you had diarrhea and stuff like that. It was really, really bad, sad, evil sickness. I mean, just imagine not be able to keep anything in your body and everything's like coming out. It was horrible. Um, Nowadays we don't really have to worry about that because we have pasteurization for our milk, but that's why you should never drink raw milk. Okay, so the mom passes away when Lincoln was only 9 years old. So here's my first question to you. Why would politicians lie about how they were brought up? Why would they say, oh, I'm from a log cabin family? No, you weren't. You were born in a rich family. Why are they lying for? What do they have to gain for lying about how they grew up? Okay, so pause the video, write your response, okay, because we're moving on in three, two, one. So, not that much longer after Lincoln's mom dies, the father remarries, and the lady's name is Sarah Bush Johnson. And they are, in a sense, kind of completely opposites when it comes to Abraham Lincoln. The father, he's illiterate, which means he cannot read. And the dad was always about work, 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 work. There is no, to him, there was no value in education. You just worked. Why do you need to read and write and do math? You know, you could talk, that's all you need to communicate. You don't need to read anything. And math, you can see for your own judgment if something's too much or too little. So why do you need the math? Why do you need English? Things like that. No, no, no. You should be working sun up to sundown. Even when the sun goes down, you should be inside working, cleaning, doing something. Lincoln's stepmom, however, saw that, hey, this kid wants to learn. This kid is like really driven. So she starts borrowing books so he could read. She teaches him, things, but really he teaches himself to read and things like that. Um, so this picture is pretty accurate. You know how Lincoln was after working all day outside, things like that. He'd be when the sun went down, he'd be inside next to the fire so he could read his book. And again, his dad was like, "What's the point of that? Why are you filling your head with nonsense? You know, you should be thinking about your work and the crops and things like that. Um, why read a story about some fantasy thing that's not going to happen to you? Why are you going to read about a book about somebody in the past? That happened back then. Let that happen back then. That has nothing to do with you." So his dad was very about work. I'm trying to get that through for you, trying to get you to understand that. His dad's mentality was all work, no fun. Anything that was fun, he saw as a waste of time. His dad was brutal. His dad was very, on that kind of stuff, you know. So Lincoln, when he got a little bit older, he got a job on a flatboat. Flatboats were basically wood, straight up wood raft, and they went down the Mississippi River. Okay, so when I say boat, it wasn't like a canoe or anything like that, or a little boat. No, it's just a straight bunch of sticks of wood that floated. They had the merchandise on there, and they went down the Mississippi, went to New Orleans, sold whatever they needed to sell to, and walked the way back and let the raft go out into the ocean. Okay, because again, you can't use those type of rafts to go upstream. It's very difficult, and you would waste so much energy trying to go upstream. So what happens is this: after doing that job for a bit, Lincoln's family says, "Hey, we're going to be moving. You know, we're going to be moving." Lincoln's like, "Okay, go ahead. I'm not going with you guys. I am not going to be working with you guys, especially you, Dad, because you want me to be a farmer, and I feel that my life is taking me elsewhere. I need to be something else, do something else." This is where he breaks off. Okay, and this is where his life really does truly change for the better. Okay, so here's my next question to you: do you think if Lincoln's stepmom didn't encourage him to learn more, that he would have been as successful? Do you think so? Yes or no? So let's say if she wasn't there, do you think he would? Because remember, he had that drive, he had the desire to learn. Do you think he still would have been as successful or close to as successful? Or do you think like, no, no, his stepmom was like, hey, that person who that support, that person was there having his back, you know, um, helping him along the way, and without that help, he might not have been as successful. So, what do you think? Could he done it on his own, or did he really do? Did he really need his the stepmom's help? What do you think? Okay, so pause the video, write your response, but we're moving on in three, two, one. So Lincoln, after his family went off another direction, he went to New Salem. This town no longer exists. Excuse me. They have where the city was, more or less. They do have in Illinois a little makeshift town of it. It's not the exact town. It's kind of something they made recently. Okay. Now Lincoln worked several jobs in New Salem. If you've ever seen the movie Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, they show in that movie just like chopping down trees with like one swing. That's not accurate, okay? But it's not that far off either. Lincoln, believe it or not, judging from this picture, I don't know if you can tell, but he is physically fit. Because you have to remember, he's working with his dad all his life, sun up to sundown, chopping down trees, cutting wood, out there, plowing and, things like that. So he's physically fit. Okay. So he worked as a lumberjack. Okay. He worked as a store clerk. He worked at the store, which is going to play a role later on in a second. Um, he did have other jobs where he was like a carpenter, where he was a wrestler. Yes, he did wrestle for New Salem. He was actually their like champion. And little fun fact, he is the only president who is on in the Wrestling Hall of Fame because he was that good. Um, so he did those jobs. Okay. Oh, and surveyor. He was a surveyor as well. Now, when he was a clerk, people would come to him and ask him questions. Now, Lincoln, this is where he gets the reputation of being Honest Abe, because he would tell people what he truly thought, but without insulting them, being mean. Because nowadays people say they say something very mean, and they're like, "Well, I'm just telling the truth." It's like, well, yeah, you can tell the truth, but you don't have to be mean. You don't have to say insulting things. He did that very well. So if some say good example, if some lady said, "Hey, does this dress make me look fat?" He'd be like, instead of saying, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't wear that." Instead, he'd be like, "You know what? Maybe you should try this dress. Because this one seems like it's more comfortable, and the color is better with you than the dress you picked out." People would ask him all kinds of questions and what he thought, what he believed, things like that, and he would give them his straight up response. And this is where he gets the nickname Honest Abe. It's during this time. Now, the Black Hawk War, a little battle, a war that happened between the natives and the people of Illinois. Lincoln signs up. His men basically make him captain. And during this time, some of the people are telling him, "Dude, you're such a well-spoken person. You should run for a state legislature." So he does in 1832. And then during that election, that first election for state legislature, he loses. Yeah, he's not successful the first time around, but he learns. He learns from them, he learns from his experience, and he says, "Okay, let me try it again in 1834." He goes, he wins. He's there for 8 years in the Illinois House of Representatives. During that time, he becomes a lawyer. Again, he doesn't go to law school or anything like that. He taught himself the law. He read books like crazy, borrowed books, and passed the bar exam and became a lawyer. Um, then he becomes a member of the House of Representatives, and this is where he challenges President Polk to basically say, where exactly were these Americans killed that you claimed were killed by Mexicans in on American soil? Well, show me exactly where. This is where his name comes out in the papers now. That hey, there's a senator, a freshman senator named Abraham Lincoln, who's challenging the president. So, this is one of my favorite things. So, apparently, Lincoln gave a speech that was so phenomenal, right? There was 40 reporters. There were 1,000 people at this place, and Lincoln would write his speeches and then keep them under his hat. That was how he used to do it. But this is the time he didn't have his hat, the top hat. And usually he would keep his speeches, but for this particular one, he lost his speech. The reporters, nobody, none of them remembered what he said. Same thing with 1,000 people who were there. Nobody remembers exactly what he was talking about, what he was saying. All they can remember is this: it was a great speech. Oh man, it was wow. But what was it about? Uh, I can't remember exactly, but I just remember it was good. Now I mentioned this in class, and some students were like, "How could none of them remember?" And like I told them, if you watched a comedy show live, and this comic was really funny, they were really good, um, are you gonna remember every single joke, every setup, and things like that? No, you're not. You're not, especially if you're laughing so much and things like that. You're having a good time, you're enjoying it. You're not going to remember every joke. If you do remember something, it's not going to be complete because, again, you were enjoying the moment. You were there. You just remember it was funny. Same thing here. People loved his speech. They just can't remember what it was about. The next thing, the Dred Scott case. This was huge. Basically, in a nutshell, what happened was this. This guy, Dred Scott, he's a slave. His master, they moved from a slave state to a free state. Okay? They lived there for several years. The master dies. So Dred Scott, according to the laws of the state, he is free now. Now, he crosses back into the slave state to bury his master. Basically, he liked the guy, things like that, pay his last respects. So then when he buries him, he tells the family, okay, guys, peace out, I'm going back. And the family's like, no, 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 you're our slave, you're our property. He's like, no, I made it to the free state, I've lived there, I am free. And so they went to court. And the Supreme Court is supposed to look at the law of the land and say whether something is right or wrong. And in this case, the Supreme Court was very much pro slavery, which meant they wanted slavery. So when it came to this court case, they said, no, Dred Scott, you are still a slave. Lincoln felt, no, 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 Dred Scott should be free. When he was running for the Senate seat, he went against this guy named Stephen Douglas, which is right there. Douglas felt, no, 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 the courts were right. Dred Scott should be a slave. So they are separated, just like the country, half and half. These two guys could not be any different. Okay, Lincoln's 6'4", very thin, wiry. His speech is very focused on the words. Right, the words have impact. The words are beautiful, just immaculate. Right. Stephen Douglas, he's like 5'2". This guy's short, pudgy, and things like that. But when he spoke with power and with passion. And I mean, he'd be like a good hype man. Honestly, like right now, he'd be a good hype man, pumping up a crowd, pumping up a football team, things like that. He had that personality. He had that voice, and that energy. So they're both going after the Senate seat. These speeches are so good that people actually start selling tickets to these speeches. Um, the election comes. Lincoln wins by the popular vote, but he loses the election because they're not based off population vote. They're based off the electoral college, and Douglas won that. So you would think Lincoln gonna feel bad, things like that. He kind of does, but he gains national attention, and this new political group called the Republicans, ask him, dude, we like what you're saying. We're in the same ballpark as what we believe in. We would like for you to run for president in 1860 as a Republican. Lincoln says, okay. So that was September 1859. He agrees to run for president of the United States as a Republican. November 6th, 1860, Lincoln wins. He is then our 16th president. And this is where we're going to be starting the Civil War when we come back from Thanksgiving break. So here's your next question. Using what you already know, do you think the Civil War was inevitable? Inevitable means it's going to happen no matter what. Okay? So you think the Civil War was going to happen no matter what? Or do you think, hey, could have been some way to avoid it? There's some agreement that could have been done, or maybe not now, but later on, or do you think, hey, no, it was going to come down to a war one way or another? What do you believe? Okay, so write your response, pause the video, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we come to your exit ticket question. Remember, you're going to only pick one of these questions to answer. The first one says, how would the world be different if Lincoln had become a farmer like his father wanted him to? So imagine if we had no Lincoln, how would our world be different? What do you think? Okay. The second question asks you, what do you think really helped Lincoln succeed? Was it his hardworking personality that he got from his dad? Was it him keeping his word, always being honest and things like that? Or do you think it was his knowledge, his intelligence, that made him successful? What do you think? Which one of those three do you think really is above the others? That this one helped him out more than this one or this one? It's this one. Which one would that be? Okay. Once you finish this exit ticket, you are done with this lesson. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun and hope you learned something new. Okay. So, you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you later. Okay.